Long, long ago, in a small village hidden between mountains and forests, there lived a simple boy named Jack, who stayed with his aging father. Jack's father had grown weak with age, his body frail, his health fading a little more each day. Poverty had wrapped itself so tightly around their lives that they had nothing, not even enough to eat, and when sickness struck, they had no money for medicine, no way to ease the old man's suffering. One day, Jack's father suddenly fell gravely ill. This terrified Jack because he had no money for medicine, no way to help the only family he had. One day, "Listen carefully, Jack," his father whispered. "There are a few healing herbs you can find deep in the forest. Bring them back, mix them into water, and I will recover soon." Hearing his father's words, Jack grabbed a small bag and set off toward the forest. Once there, he began searching for the herbs. Some were easy to find, lying quietly beneath the trees, but others forced him deeper, farther into the heart of the forest. As he searched, Jack suddenly noticed something strange. Something was falling rapidly from the sky. Before he could react, a man came crashing down to the ground right before his eyes. Jack rushed toward him, but the man was in terrible condition. It was clear he had little time left. With trembling hands, the man reached into his pocket and pulled out something that looked like tiny seeds. He pressed them into Jack's palm, and with his final breath whispered, "The land of fairies." Jack slowly opened his fist and saw the seeds glowing faintly in a way he had never seen before. He stood there, confused and overwhelmed. What was he supposed to do with these seeds? And what did those final words, "the land of fairies," even mean? After thinking for a long time, Jack suddenly realized how much time he had spent in the forest. His father was waiting for him at home. So, holding the strange glowing seeds tightly in his hand, Jack turned back toward the village and began his journey home. After returning home, Jack carefully mixed the herbs into water and gave it to his father. Slowly, the old man began to feel better and soon drifted into a peaceful sleep. Jack, exhausted from his long journey, lay down as well. As he closed his eyes, his mind kept replaying everything he had witnessed in the forest. The falling man, the glowing seeds, and those mysterious final words. Thinking of it all, Jack too drifted into sleep. When morning arrived, Jack awoke to find his father feeling much better. Excited, he rushed to his father's side and told him everything. Every strange thing he had seen in the forest. But even after hearing the entire story, his father could not make sense of it either. Still, he said thoughtfully, "Whatever the secret is, Jack, it lies within those seeds. Plant them in the soil of our yard, and let us see what grows." Following his father's advice, Jack planted the glowing seeds in their small garden. But he kept a few aside, just in case. Sometime later, the skies grew dark. Thunder roared, and rain began to pour down heavily. As the rainwater seeped deep into the soil, something incredible began to happen. The seeds responded, sprouting into a tiny green shoot. And that shoot quickly twisted and grew into a long, winding vine. The vine climbed higher and higher until it seemed to touch the very sky itself. Jack and his father watched in stunned silence. The rain stopped, but their minds were full of questions. Jack turned to his father and asked, "Why don't I climb this vine and see where it leads in the sky? Maybe then we'll discover the secret behind that man and his final words." His father nodded in agreement. And so, Jack took a deep breath, gripped the magical vine with both hands, and began to climb toward the clouds and toward the unknown. As Jack climbed higher and higher along the magical vine, he began to feel as though he was entering another world altogether. The moment he broke through the clouds, his eyes widened in astonishment. Below him stretched a land unlike anything he had ever seen. A radiant ground bathed in shimmering, rainbow-colored light. It was the fairy world. All around him were blooming flowers that swayed to an invisible rhythm. Tiny fairies soaring gracefully through the air, and trees whose leaves played music with the wind. The air itself was sweet with fragrance, and everything, every blade of grass, every drop of dew, seemed to glow. Jack's heart filled with joy at the sight. And then he saw her, a fairy unlike the others, calm, mysterious, and breathtakingly beautiful. Her name was Elira, the daughter of the Fairy Queen. Jack and Elira met for the first time beside a magical lake, where Elira sat alone. Jack approached her and began to speak. He told her about his world, about the poverty he lived in, the struggles he faced, and the deep worry he carried for his ailing father. Elira, in turn, told Jack stories of the fairy world, of magic that flowed through everything, of dances that lit up the skies, and of the whispers of the heart that every fairy listened to. And so, little by little, a friendship bloomed between them, a bond that grew deeper with each passing day. Time flowed like a dream, and their friendship turned into love. For a while, everything was perfect. They were happy, truly happy. But that happiness would not last forever. When word of their love reached Queen Celesta, Elira's mother, her heart filled with anger. Celesta was wise, but she was also strict and unyielding. And when she learned of her daughter's love for a human boy, she summoned Elira before her and said, "You cannot love a human," Queen Celesta declared. "Our world and theirs are not the same. Humans deceive. It is in their very nature. How could they ever understand the feelings of a fairy's heart?" Elira begged her mother again and again, but the queen would not change her mind. At last, Celesta gave a cruel order. Jack was to be banished from the fairy world. A powerful fairy stepped forward, and with a wave of her magic, Jack was swept away, pulled from the skies and sent back to his own world. When Jack awoke, he found himself home once more. His father was now fully healed, and had opened a small shop, earning just enough for them to live a simple life. But Jack was not happy. His world, once familiar, now felt empty and colorless compared to the fairy world. Nothing brought him joy anymore. Each day he sat beneath the magical vine, staring up at the sky, thinking of Elira, and wondering if she missed him too. But Jack was not the kind to give up. He believed that if love was true, no boundary could ever stand in its way. His heart burned with a single thought. He would find a way back to Elira. Meanwhile, in the fairy world, Elira too had fallen into deep sorrow. She refused to eat or drink, spending her days lost in memories of Jack. Seeing her daughter like this, Queen Celesta grew troubled. She tried to comfort Elira, saying gently, "My child, what you are doing is not right. You do not know humans the way I do." As Celesta spoke, her voice grew distant, heavy with memories. She looked into Elira's eyes and began to tell her a story from long ago. "Many years ago," she said softly, "when I was your age, I fell in love with a human too, but he never truly cared for me. He already had a happy family, a wife, children, a home. And yet, I loved him so deeply that I was willing to go to any lengths to make him mine. And I did. I crossed every line that should never be crossed. I used my magic and turned every member of his joyful family into animals. Then I brought that man here, into the fairy world. I tried everything I could to make him happy. But no matter what I did, he never smiled. He never looked at me with love. Every day he stood before me with folded hands, begging me to let him return to his world. But I refused, after what I had done to his family. I couldn't bear to let him go. And then, one morning I woke to find he was gone. He had leapt from the fairy world, down toward the human realm, but he did not know that reaching the ground from here takes years. I searched for him everywhere, but I never found him again. Not to this very day. Hearing this story, Elira's eyes filled with tears. She whispered, "Mother, what you did was not right. You tried to force someone to love you, and that is not love at all. What you did to that man's family, it was unforgivable. My love for Jack is nothing like that. He loves me, and I love him. Our hearts chose each other, freely and truly." Sudden shift, angry, commanding. "Enough!" Celesta shouted, her voice echoing like thunder. "You will not love that human. You will not marry him. You must forget Jack completely, or I will do to him exactly what I did to that man's family. This is my final order." With those words, Queen Celesta. Now, did you understand the meaning behind Celesta's story? Let me tell you. The man who had fallen from the sky in front of Jack, the one who placed those glowing seeds in his hands, was none other than the same human Celesta had once loved. Days passed, and Jack, driven by love and determination, climbed the magical vine once more, returning to the fairy world. But this time, things were different. As soon as he arrived, the palace guards spotted him and captured him, bringing him before Queen Celesta herself. Jack knelt before the queen, hands folded, and begged for his love, begged for Elira. Celesta stared down at him and said firmly, "If your love is truly real, then you must pass 3 trials. The trials of courage, sacrifice, and faith." Without hesitation, Jack agreed. His love for Elira was so powerful, so unshakable, that he was ready to face anything, no matter how dangerous. The first trial, courage. For the first test, Jack was sent deep into a terrifying dark forest, a place filled with illusions and fear, where shadows whispered lies and unseen eyes watched from the dark. But Jack closed his eyes and held on to one image, Elira's smile. Her face gave him strength. Step by step, he pushed forward through the darkness, and at last he emerged victorious. The trial of courage was complete. The second trial, sacrifice. Next came the trial of sacrifice. Jack was given a magical sword and was told he must defeat 2 fairies in battle. If he killed even one, he would win the test. But there was a catch. Anyone who wielded that sword would lose all their memories. Jack looked down at the blade, then gently set it aside. "I will not take a life without reason," he said. "And if I lose my memories, how will I ever recognize Elira again?" And so Jack passed the second trial, not through violence, but through love and wisdom. The third trial, faith. Now came the final and most difficult test. There was silence all around. Below, an endless abyss. Above, nothing but mist and darkness. Jack took a deep breath, listened to the voice of his heart, whispered Elira's name, and jumped. For a few moments, everything was still. Then, the winds roared. Light burst through the shadows, and Jack, weightless and fearless, floated gently across the void and landed beyond the mysterious gate. And with that leap of faith, Jack had passed all three trials, with honesty, courage, and love. This time, Queen Celesta herself was waiting for him. She looked into his eyes and saw that Jack was no longer the same. There was no selfishness left within him, only pure love and unwavering devotion. "If a soul like Jack's cannot stay in this world," Elira said softly, "then I do not wish to stay here either." Celesta was silent for a long moment. She lifted her gaze to the sky and whispered, "Perhaps I was wrong. True love knows no boundaries." And so, for the first time in the history of the fairy world, a human and a fairy princess were wed. The skies sparkled with light. Fairies danced in celebration, and even Jack's father was brought into the fairy world by magic, so he could witness his son's happiness. Jack and Elira vowed to spend their lives together. Two souls from two different worlds, bound forever by one heart. And from that day forward, a part of the fairy world remained open to humankind. A place where stories of true love, courage, and faith would be written. Every single day, Jack brought Elira back to his world as his queen. Together with his father, they built a life full of joy and laughter. It was at last the family Jack had always dreamed of. But Jack's life is never that simple. Unseen shadows were moving closer. Storms that Jack could not see were already forming on the horizon. He was still unaware of the dark chapters waiting just beyond the light. And then, there would come a day, a terrible day, when Jack would lose Elira. What could tear their worlds apart? What destiny lies ahead for them? And how far will Jack go to fight for the love he vowed to protect? The answers await in part 2 of this magical journey. Don't miss it, right here on our channel. And if this story touched your heart, show us your love with a like. Your one click gives us the motivation to bring you many more magical tales like this one.